Hello and welcome to True Crime with Venice. So, in regards to the story of the case that's going on the outside of Atlanta, Lake Oconee, the couple Joycelyn Wilson and Gary Jones. I was doing some research and just wanted to kind of know more about that area and Lake Oconee. And I found that there was there was well, not another, but there was a murder that happened over 10 years ago, back in 2014. And this was an elderly couple that was living in a beautiful lakefront property on Lake Oconee in a gated community. So it was Shirley and Russell Dermond. Shirley Dermond was 87 years old at the time of her death in 2014, and her husband Russell was 88 at the time of his death in 2014. However, there is no exact date and time of the couple's death. The couple was expected at a Kentucky Derby watch party with neighbors but didn't show up. The neighbors reached out to them by phone. There was no answer. And days later, the neighbors showed up at their home and were surprised that their doors weren't locked and they weren't responding when they called their names. So the neighbors then look into the garage and they see their vehicles are still there. And that's when they find the husband, Russell, on the garage floor, lying in between the two vehicles, and he was decapitated. There was a crossword puzzle that Shirley Dermond, the wife, was working on that was left on the kitchen table per the sheriff, and Mr. Dermond's body was found lying on top of his bathrobe, wearing boxers and a t-shirt. He was lying on the floor. Shirley's body was not located at the time when they found Mr. Dermond's body, so authorities assumed that she was taken or abducted. Their bed was also unmade, and the house wasn't ransacked or disturbed in any way. And from speaking with their adult children, authorities discovered that Mr. Dermond would lounge around most of the day in the home in his robe in his boxers and a t-shirt, if he didn't have anywhere to go that day or any plans. And Mrs. Dermond would get dressed right away. So Shirley McDermott, her body was found. It later surfaced in Lake Oconee on May 16, 2014, about 5 miles down the lake, about 10 days after her husband's body was found in the garage. Her body was tied to a cement block, and she had been severely beaten. She was fully dressed. And the couple had 4 adult children whom all lived out of the state of Georgia. One of their sons were deceased. He was murdered in 2000 while trying to purchase crack cocaine. The person responsible for his death is in prison to this day, and investigators didn't see a connection in their eldest son's murder and theirs. The couple, Mr. and Mrs. Dermond, they were natives of New Jersey and moved to Atlanta back in 1994. And that's when they eventually purchased their lakefront home on Lake Oconee for almost $1 million. The community that they lived in is an upscale and gated community. Mr. Dermond owned, I think, about 19 Hardee's restaurant chains, which he later sold. I think he had been retired for about 10 years at the time of their death. And Mrs. Dermond was a stay-at-home wife. The wealthy couple had been married for 68 years, and 2 of their sons followed in their parents' footsteps. They owned a Florida-based Ramsey development, which operates fast food restaurants. And according to the Florida Secretary of State's office, the firm employs about 700 people and generates more than $14 million in revenue a year. The murders were not tied to a burglary, as nothing was taken from the home. The couple lived on the lake, so someone could have accessed their property from the lake. The security cameras entering the gated community were knocked out about a week prior, I think from a storm. And also, Mr. Dermond's head was never found. It was reported that a man was seen in their yard that Saturday during the day, before they were found. And 10 years later, DNA was found on Mr. Dermond Russell's shirt, and it didn't belong to the couple, and it was uploaded into CODIS, which is a national DNA FBI database. There were no updates on the results of the DNA testing, which was done a few months ago. So I didn't find anything saying that they found someone or if they had a DNA or genetic makeup from that. So I guess they're still working on that with the FBI. And what led me to this case, as I mentioned at the start of the video, was the missing couple, Gary and Joycelyn. And Gary's still missing. And people have been wondering if Gary is even in the water. Most people, I think, believe that he is somewhere in the water, and maybe his body is attached to some type of debris that's holding him down. Because I think I remember the sheriff saying that it took about maybe 14 or 15 days for your water to fill with for your body to fill with water, and then it'll surface and float up. But I know they've been missing. Well, he's been missing since the 8th. Is the day that he and Joycelyn went out to the lake to celebrate his 50th birthday. So it's been it's been about 15, 16 days since he's been missing, or his body's been missing. When we know that his shoes were found, his wallet was found, and his truck was parked at the hotel that they were staying in near Lake Oconee. So that's why I decided to do this story. If there, or any type of suspicions, whether this case is linked or there's somebody out there, some wild person out there that's doing things to people around on the lake. But just from what I've read and what I've seen in the Dermond murder case, there doesn't seem to be a connection to me, but you never know. In regards to the Dermonds, there was no robbery. Their bank accounts weren't affected. Mr. Dermond's, unfortunately, his head is still missing. It was never found. And also, did the perpetrator arrive by boat, or how did they arrive to the Dermond's home? They had to have access to a boat because they eventually disposed of Mrs. Dermond's body in the lake. So they had to have access to a boat. And if it was at nighttime, I know I don't see someone doing this in broad daylight, but if it was at night, they had to be very familiar with that lake, with that area of Putnam County and Lake Oconee. So I don't know. It's still a mystery. It's very intriguing, especially since they haven't found Gary's body yet. The missing couple from Atlanta. And they're still awaiting the actual results of Joycelyn's autopsy, because they did mention from the preliminary autopsy, the sheriff said that Joycelyn didn't have any water in her lungs, and she still had air. Well, he said that she had air in her lungs. They didn't mention anything about water, so I'm not sure if she had water in her lungs either. So it'll be interesting to see, once her autopsy results actually come in, to see what her actual cause of death was. And then I think they can go from there. But there has to be something going on, because the sheriff is still saying that they're still investigating it like an actual crime. It's not just a regular drowning that they're investigating it as. And also, when I saw a news footage last night, that they mentioned that they had obtained a subpoena to get Gary's cell phone records. So I was wondering, why do they need his cell phone records? Is there something else that they're investigating that they're just not telling the public about? So that made me wonder in regards to this case with the Dermonds, and then for Gary to still be missing, and people are speculating that he may not even be in the water. Very interesting. So I will keep you posted on anything I find, if they find this body, or what happens. Because I am in the state of Georgia, so I do watch the local news to see for updates daily. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think there's maybe any type of connection with that couple that was murdered on the lake, and Gary still missing? His body hasn't been found he's been missing since February 8th, and Joycelyn's body surfaced the next day. She was floating in the water the next day. They found her in her body. She still had air in her lungs, and she still had her cell phone in her hand. Very interesting and sad. So let me know what you guys think. Please comment down below, share your opinions, and please subscribe if you haven't. Thanks so much for the support. Thanks for tuning in to True Crime with Fenice, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Tonight, there is new movement in one of the most brutal unsolved killings in Georgia. Tomorrow will mark 10 years since Russell and Shirley Dermond, both in their late 80s, were killed. Authorities say Russell was decapitated while Shirley's body was tied to cinder blocks later found in Lake Oconee in Putnam County. It's a cold case now heating up with a possible break involving DNA. Tonight, 11 Alive's Cody Alcorn spoke with the Putnam County Sheriff and the FBI agent who's been working the Dermond case about how this new evidence could lead investigators straight to the killers.
Thursday, May 1st, 2014. The last time 88-year-old Russell Dermond was seen alive, captured on camera inside a local Publix. The last day he and his wife, 87-year-old Shirley Dermond, were ever heard from again.
Putnam County 911. Yes, I have an emergency. Okay, I think I have somebody dead.
On May 6th, Russell's decapitated body was found in the couple's garage. Shirley missing. Special Agent Andy Smith with the FBI.
I have never seen a case like this in my time as an FBI agent.
10 days after Russell's headless body was found, fishermen found Shirley's body miles away from their lakefront home.
The body was weighted, and obviously it was not intended for her to be found.
A mistake by the killers.
I do believe it was more than one person was involved.
Likely people the Dermonds knew.
The lack of evidence of theft makes it seem more of a personal crime.
Who may soon be identified through advancements in technology.
Whether it's the DNA evidence that we're evaluating or cellular data that we're evaluating.
S.A. Smith makes it clear.
We never stop trying to find who committed this murder.
The most promising lead in nearly a decade. DNA found on Russell's shirt. A private lab confirms does not belong to the Dermonds, which Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills just learned about last week.
It's probably going to be whoever perpetrated these murders, or at least somebody who was a party to the crime.
A crime with many unanswered questions only investigators and the Dermonds' killers can answer.
We're not ready to put out all the details that we have about what happened that night.
But a decade later, they're ready to put the killers on notice.
We do have leads, that we are looking for you, and that we're not going to stop until we get you.
S.A. Smith says between the DNA evidence and the cell phone data being evaluated, technology is going to solve this case. Now, as for the DNA, he says there is still more testing to be done before they can enter that into a national database, and also confirms they have evidence being examined at their labs in Quantico. There is a $25,000 reward being offered in this case. In Chamblee, Cody Alcorn, 11 Alive News.
Channel 2 Action News exclusive in the case of a missing Atlanta teacher who disappeared while out boating on Lake Oconee. The sheriff is explaining why this is not just a simple drowning. Channel 2 Stage Fernandez is live in Putnam County, and Ty, today you're at the actual boat ramp where Gary Jones launched his boat 2 weeks ago.
Karen, this is the first time we're doing our live report from the ramp where deputies say they saw Gary Jones launching his boat back on February 8th. If you take a look over here, there's a camera, and the sheriff told us he saw surveillance video of Jones and his fiancee getting on the boat. The sheriff said there was nothing really suspicious about the video. One of the last things he saw was Jones's fiancee handing him his cell phone. He put it in his pocket, and he headed out on Lake Oconee.
Different dog teams have hit consistently in an area that we're now focused on.
We launched News Drone 2 Monday from an investigator's boat to show you where several canines have picked up the scent of a human body that could be missing Atlanta teacher Gary Jones. Investigators planted this orange life jacket in the water using a cinder block and rope to mark where the dogs keep alerting deputies.
So when the dogs hit on a scent, they're telling you the truth every time.
Investigators still don't know what happened to Jones back on February 8th, and they still don't know how his fiancée, Joycelyn Wilson, ended up dead near the boat. Sheriff Howard Sills told us he saw something in Wilson's autopsy report that has him continuing to investigate this as a death investigation, which many times mirrors a murder investigation.
Our working theory is that as he entered the timberline there, that he was running at full speed and that the shaft of the engine hit one of the underground tree stumps.
News Drone 2 shows you how many trees reach the water's surface. There are many more about 6 inches below the surface as well.
The White House you see through the trees there was someone working on that house on the day Gary Jones disappeared, and that person believes he saw Jones's boat right around this area.
Close to the time when investigators believe the incident happened.
He heard the high pitch of the engine. It was going wee, and he was running wide open.
Now, Sheriff Howard Sills told us all evidence points to Gary Jones being in the water, and you may be wondering, why are they just now looking through his phone records? Well, the sheriff told me he's just getting his hands on them now, about 2 weeks later. Today, they're also going through the text messages in Wilson's phone. Remember, Wilson was found dead with her phone in her hand. We're live in Putnam County here on Lake Oconee. Taisha Fernandez, Channel 2 Action News.
And we have more details now. Gary Jones and his fiancée Joycelyn Wilson disappeared on February 8th, and search crews found Wilson's body in Lake Oconee the next day. Family and friends attended her funeral service just last week. Wilson was an instructor at Spelman College.